What? Standard Man? I remember that name. Oh boy, it's been a whole half a year until, we just had to have Standard Man meta back. Also, by the way, I'm sure a lot of you have seen the Vanguard YouTube rewind that Eric, Vanguard Insider, did. By the way, absolutely love it. But, bro, why didn't you put Standard Man in, man? That's like the highlight of the year. I mean, not to brag, but like, come on, man. Just kidding. I love you, buddy. Love you. It's all good. Anyway, today it's meta-analysis time, and if everything goes well, this video won't be late because I have my shit sorted, hopefully. But also, normally, if everything has gone according to schedule, the ability to join this channel as a channel member should be available. So if you scroll down a little bit, next to the subscribe button, there will be a join button. My words are getting slurred. But if you want to, you can join as a channel member and receive various perks as well as a shout out at the beginning of the video after you join, as well as, being in the list of shout outs at the end of the video, plus a bunch of other perks. So it's, again, not mandatory whatsoever. My content is free for everyone to enjoy, but if you feel like giving an extra little bit of support, I really do appreciate it. So just wanted to get that out of the way. So today we're going to be talking about this very unique V-EB11 meta, which is essentially Bermuda meta once again. So Standard Man strikes back, and it's interesting because the community reaction has been pretty wild, even though a lot of us haven't even played against the deck yet, and the release timing of it will actually not impact our Springfest that much. It's still getting a lot of harsh reactions, and I want to make a separate video talking about this deck as a whole because I think it deserves that kind of spotlight and the kind of community discourse that it's been creating. But after being in Japan, I really didn't get the same crazy reaction that a lot of other people did, because I mean, the deck is insanely good, yes, but it doesn't seem like too insane. It doesn't seem like, Melody in its prime time insane either, according to me, from my experience. But we're gonna talk about the meta. Once again, huge thank you to Dexander for providing the pie chart, and as of the next meta analysis, I'm gonna try to incorporate one more pie chart. I will forego mentioning it for now because I think some of you will know it is created by a man called Core, and we're going to be trying to incorporate that from the next meta analysis onwards, because I think that having two perspectives towards this and like his kind of conversion chart as well will be an interesting way to look at the meta and actually what happens in it, with the decks. So, but for this one, for V-EB11, we're going to be still looking at just Dexander. So without any further ado, let's take a look at the beautiful pie chart. And thus he moveth, and thus appeareth the pie chart. So, as you can see, Bermuda is a big percentage. I leaked this, I didn't leak it, I teased it at the end of the last meta-analysis that this does take up a big chart, big slice of the chart, and as you can see, it's basically 60% Bermuda, 32 whole tops, which is a lot. So, to give you some context, in case you haven't been keeping up and I haven't been making set breakdowns, and therefore some of you might not know what the cards do, but I'm still going to try to make set breakdown at some point. It's just that I'm so behind now that it's going to be a really big time investment. I'm not sure how to go about it. But anyway, the reason why Bermuda is so good is because we got this cool card called Top Idol Revere releasing, which basically says that at the end of the battle, you can Raging Form without retiring stuff, but basically by just rewriting from hand, and you're also able to draw a bunch of cards, and the entire deck is super consistent. Maybe not too super consistent, but quite consistent in being able to do that. So Persona Blasting came back in an interesting way, and it's very strong. That's kind of the TLDR of it. But the deck has a lot of interesting tools, and we need to talk about that. Like, first things first, the Grade 2 Karo. The Grade 2 Karo is nuts, and actually it's so nuts that one of the big VGCS tournaments in Korea banned it, as like a custom rule that you cannot use Grade 2 Karo in Revere, and that was really interesting because what Karo enables you to do is to search a copy of your Vanguard. So it's splashable to anything. Any Bermuda card that comes out after this that needs to Persona Blast or anything like that will run Grade 2 Karo, basically, because that card is so good. And so essentially you can just write up your Grade 3 Revere and then call down the Grade 2 Karo and search yourself another Revere, and there you go, the skill is online. And that's just really good. Now, we talked about the grade 3 Reverie, you know, skill-wise, but keep in mind that every time it comes into play, you get another force marker. So obviously you can keep amassing force 1 and swing for bigger numbers, and therefore you can get over defensives as you keep swinging, because some people can go force 2, sure, especially if you got lucky in the early game and crit them a couple times and they're at 4. Obviously force 2 will be the scariest, but if they're still at low amounts of damage, force 1 lets you get over defensives and keep swinging. And so that's the nice part of the grade 3 top idol Reverie. However, there are still 2 other Reveries outside of the starter that help this archetype. And the first one that I think, you know, deserves attention is the grade 1 that lets you ride it from your hand after writing. So you can basically write a grade 1, optimally the one that lets you draw 1, discard 1 to filter for your pieces and your Reverie, and then you're able to ride this one and then still be able to search, thanks to her effect, for another Reverie. And then you have the grade 2 Reverie that has the same kind of, you know, ride from hand effect, but then when your Vanguard is placed, aka when you re-ride a top idol Reverie, you can restand it on rearguard, which is huge, because if you can high roll and essentially, like, you know, get those grade 2 Revieries out and, you know, have a full board of Revieries, grade 2s and 1s, and then the 3 in the middle, you're able to really punish your opponent. Not even punish your opponent, you're able to steamroll. But the thing is, people kind of look at this steamroll and go just like, oh my god, that's so unfair. Their whole field restands, their Vanguard restands without any cost, really, because there's no Counter Blast, no Soul Blast, and they just, you know, beat me to death in one turn. But, you know, we say that, but I don't see how that's different from Tachikaze. Like, Tachikaze, okay, sure, the Vanguard doesn't restand, but if they drew their, like, you know, the Aggro Kanto and, like, all the cards on time, and they set up their gauge correctly, then it's just like, it kind of does the same thing, but even more aggressively, because it doesn't even need to rely too much on, you know, having the specific, like, Reverie formation and stuff like that, and drawing into these Revieries early, you know, and making sure you have this consistent chain ride and everything. So it's interesting to me. Like, I will not deny that this deck is nuts. I will not deny that it's crazy good. I just think we're slightly over-exaggerating. Even if it's 60% here, keep in mind a lot of these tournaments happen right after the release of the set, and obviously things will be impacted by that. And the reason why I say all this is because this format that we're looking at right here in Japan lasted for 4 weeks. In English, it will last for 5, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look at a calendar quickly to tell you if I'm not telling you lies or not. So it releases here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. So we have 5 weeks of this meta in English. And then when this meta ends, we get 3 new clans that enter. In addition to that, though, WGP Tokyo showed us some interesting results in that because Reverie comes in as this, like, force overlord that is able to just dominate the playing field and essentially just, you know, beat a lot of the previously, you know, Axel heavy decks out of the format, we see force decks returning because they can actually play against Reverie pretty well. You know, DP actually went X1 at WGP Tokyo in this Reverie meta simply because it has a pretty alright matchup, because you have a lot of defensive options thanks to Dieliner, and you're able to actually survive this Reverie rush pretty easily without struggling too much. And so a lot of force decks are coming back, protect decks are coming back like Dark Irregulars. Also, if you hear scratching, that's my cat scratching my carpet. But, so, just like I kind of predicted, a strong force deck coming in as the dominant deck of the meta is going to push up some protect and force decks with it. And so that's really, really interesting to me that that's how it is. And like decks like Genesis 2 are able to still do things just because of that. But that doesn't mean that the Axel decks are bad, they're just going to be less represented than before. And so I think, yes, it is a problem that we have 60% Bermuda, but I think that once we get the next set, V-EB11, with Agroforce, Shadows, and Narukami, this will not be as oppressive. This will not be as much of an issue, and just from watching a lot of Reverie gameplay while in Japan, it just didn't feel that insanely crazy. So, I'm sorry, I've been really using a lot of the time of this video talking about Reverie, and I'm gonna be repeating some of these points, but to a bigger extent in a separate video. But yeah, so I really just wanted to talk about this, because obviously it's 60%. Obviously not all of these are Reverie. Not all 32 decks are Reverie. Pacifica is strong. Like, every deck in this set is strong. Maybe with the exception of Coral, I think is the only one that didn't get too many results. But the deck is really good. That's just how it is. But we still see the other decks doing well. Like Murakumo still at 13%, you know, which is just like, okay, it's half of what I had before, but it's still a pretty big showing. Tachikaze, like I said, is still a strong deck because it can just go first and wipe out the opponent. Narukami is still doing great. My biggest yikes here is that Pale Moon is only, there's only one deck in this chart. Golds, only one deck. But then, you know, Great Nature is like 2, Aqua Force 2 without Revon. So it's pretty interesting. And then I think like it is a meta shift. And it is quite oppressive, and yes, we can make a big deal about it, but it's not gonna last long, and it's not gonna be as scary as we think. Sure, you might have some of your shop challenges be dominated by this very deck, but it's not gonna be that much of an issue in Springfest, simply because you're gonna have more, you know, variants, simply because you can't use the same clan across the board, and therefore we're not gonna see as many tops for Revere as like in a BCS season, if this released like in the summer before BCS, for example. So the only other things that I wanted to mention here, I mean, looking at this pie chart, is, for example, we have a Spikes top, which is, again, like I said, a Force deck just coming up because of how heavy the Force meta is. And so I feel like a lot of decks, like in this format that we're gonna have now, you might be thinking of like how to beat Revere, what are good decks to counter Revere, and you know, that might be Narukami, that might be just playing your Axel decks. Honestly, they're still good, and if you go first with Murakumo, you still have a good matchup. You can just bot deck a bunch of the Reveres that they call out or whatever else, and so it's just good. But I will talk about Revere in a separate video. I've spent a lot of time in this video talking about it, but I'm still going to talk about it in a separate video because I want to, and so I think the deck does need to be featured in more depth in that sense. But so, yeah, Revere is very strong, yes. And I mean, I apologize I didn't talk about too much, you know, about the other separate decks, but we've talked about them so much for the last half a year that there's not so much like unique aspects of the deck changing to talk about, but more like how they deal with Revere and how they still manage to get tops in this meta. So I don't think, like, yes, I think we'll have, you know, some shop challenges dominated by Revere, but by the time Springfest rolls around, I do not think this will be too much of a problem, and we'll see a fair bit of representation. We'll see how that affects Premium too, because Revere is also really good. I mean, the new Bermuda support makes Bermuda really good in Premium too, and we're going to see WGP results the coming weekend actually show us what that change will be. So yeah, that's more or less it for this meta-analysis. I hope you guys don't mind that I'm not saying too much about the other clans, simply because these are all clans we've been seeing outside of, like I said, Dark Regulars. Like, yes, it's a Protect deck that can deal with this, and like I think, you know, it's a shame that Nubatama can't right now, because they're better at stopping smaller attacks and pokes than, you know, what Revere throws at you, and you know, not having force numbers does make it a bit of a hard matchup, but it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting what this meta is looking like, and I mean, the only good thing about it is that while, yes, Revere is really strong, I personally don't think it's going to get restricted, even if we think that Karo should be getting banned, but I think that the deck, yes, you will see it on like every single team almost at the top tables in team leagues, but there's still going to be other decks that you can pick, and there's decks like Narukami coming out that just have insanely good matchups against it. So I don't think it's anything to worry about too much. I would normally make a much bigger deal and meme out of this, and that's why you don't have a new Standard Man skit, you know, because I don't think this will be as much of a problem, but we'll see. It might be. I might be proved wrong. But anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. That is the meta analysis for this set. It's going to be interesting to see how it changes with the next one, because in my opinion, the next set is arguably one of the best V-Series sets, because it really, there's so much emotion about it and so many things that people just didn't predict and all those things, and I'm really excited to talk about it when that comes around in early March. So yeah, a lot to look forward to, but that's gonna be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.